Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to rank the 15 Draculas. And I thought that after watching Renfield, I could actually do this. And I am leaving a couple out. Like, I can already think of a couple that, it's just really hard to figure out, like, all the Draculas from these obscure projects. Like, I forgot all about the Greek Dracula from that Dracula and Company movie we watched. I forgot all about Frankenstein and Me. They had this one sequence where it was like a Brides of Dracula story, and they had this Dracula in it, and technically he should count. But I thought just stick to the main ones that are on Wikipedia, and then if I could remember any others, then that's fine. So, I have 15, and number 15, the worst one, is Leslie Nielsen, I can't remember, from Dracula Dead and Loving It. This is not actually like a bad portrayal. This is not a bad performance. It's a really good performance. It's just that this is intended as a comedy. The whole point of Leslie Nielsen playing Dracula is that it's funny that he's so not Dracula. It's funny that he's who he is and that he's playing this iconic character. It's not really meant to be taken seriously at all. But he did a really good job. That's why he's in last place, is because he was so good at not being Dracula, but being like this comedic character. That movie was pretty funny. Like, I give that movie a very low, like 3 out of 5, similar to Renfield. Number 14, now this is going to piss people off, I don't really care. Number 14 is Gary Oldman from Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is a sad movie to me because I used to love seeing this cover at the video store in the library. It's such a cool, unique, creepy cover with those gargoyle faces and the red, the font, and it just looks like it's going to be a really brutal, badass movie. And the fact that it's called Bram Stoker's Dracula too, just adds another layer of perfection. But then you watch the movie and it's like, what the hell is this? Like, why am I watching this melodrama, romance crap with Gary Oldman and this ugly ass, stupid wig and this pasty, weird looking face and this red shirt thing or red whatever? Like, it's terrible. I hate this movie with a passion. It's one of my least favorite movies ever. I've never been able to even finish the movie because I just can't get past how terrible it is. Like, it's just so bad. It's so fucking bad. And I can't stand the constant, like, praise of this crap movie. Praise just because it's made by Francis Ford Coppola. Just because it has scope. It has scope because it lasts all this time and it, you have some interesting ideas, I guess. But it's just so trash. It's just so fucking terrible. And the worst part of it is this boring, bland, pathetic portrayal of Dracula by Gary Oldman. I mean, I really like Gary Oldman sometimes. I don't think he's the greatest actor. He's like a B actor to me. Like, I think I much prefer other actors on this list in general. Like, even Leslie Nielsen, I would sound really stupid if I was saying, like, the wrong one. Like, Leslie Nell Nielsen. Let's just call him that. Leslie Neil Nielsen. He is a much better actor to me than Gary Oldman. In fact, let's go down the list. Well, I don't know who that guy is. That guy, no. 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 That guy, maybe. I haven't seen any other movies of his. That guy, no. That guy, yeah. That guy, no. That guy, yeah. That guy, yeah. Yeah. That guy, nah, no. So, like, you can see right there, like, a couple of these actors all over the place on this list I much prefer to Gary Oldman. And it's really sad, though, to me, because it has fucking Winona Ryder in it. Winona Ryder is, like, the most fucking sexy actress that ever lived. And, well, actually, she's one of them. It's really tough. It's really, really tough. Like, she is, like, near the top, though, if not at the top of the list of even right now. Like, even right now, she is, like, I don't know how old she is compared to me, but even right now, she's sexier than all the actresses in the MCU. She's sexier than all those fucking overrated, boring, bland actresses that they're so trending nowadays, like Florence Pugh and fucking Jennifer Lawrence and shit. Like, Winona Ryder right now is sexier than them in every way, shape, or form. She's just like, Winona Ryder is like the closest thing to, like, I don't know, like the closest, the embodiment of beautiful to me. Like, just Winona Ryder is just, she's on another level. She's on another level of just perfection, just utter perfection. Like, I'm not a cannibal, but if I had to be a cannibal in, like, the apocalyptic days, I would. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't ever cannibalize anyone. But if I had to, let's say I'm in a Saw trap. Let's say that Jigsaw is like, Marco, let's play a game. You've been a fat fuck for a long time. And so you like to eat, huh? Well, in order to get out of this trap, you're going to have to consume a full human being. You're going to have to grind up their bones. You're going to have to consume them too. And the only person in the room is Winona Ryder. That would be so heartbreaking. That would be, oh, no, I don't want to eat you. I want to save you. But I would have to, and it would be a life lesson learned. Marco, you just eat less, okay? And I do, actually. I'm not, but if it were like a Saw movie, that would be like the perfect trap, probably, for like a fat person. Oh, you like to eat? Well, you're going to have to consume this full living person who's just like tied up, defenseless. Like, that would be really terrifying and sad and scary and shit. But I guess I'd have to. Like, I don't know. Where would I start? Like, are we talking about, like, options, too? Like, do I have to eat it raw? Because that would make me sick. Well, it might make me sick anyway. Like, what kind of spices do we have? What kind of, like, can I turn things into desserts? Do I have, like, any chef to assist me? Do I have, like, what types of weapons? Are the weapons dirty? Like in the fucking original movie with the... And this sounds so terrible, by the way, but it's just such an interesting, like, scenario to think of, like, what if you were forced to do that? Like, where would I start? I think I'd start at the hair. Get the hair over with or something. Like, I don't know. Because, like, if the hair could, like, clog your insides and shit. That's really tough. This needs to be like its own video where I just discuss, like, how would I cannibalize Winona Ryder. I wouldn't, though. I wouldn't. I swear I would not. But if I had to, people are gonna think that I'm like Army Hammer or some shit. No, I'm just kidding. But Winona Ryder, she is just she is just the greatest thing, the greatest person, the greatest goddess to ever live. Like, I went to school with a girl who kind of looked like her a little bit, but she was kind of a piece of trash, and so it's like kind of disappointing and sad. But it's disappointing to get back to this list, because I know that, like, all the people watching, it's so funny because you think about the types of people who would click onto a ranking Dracula's video, and you just think, like, are they going to be disturbed by this discussion, or are they going to be, like, really turned on? Like, but it's disappointing because I really love to watch the full movie and see, you know, her performance and the rest of it, but I just can't get past how bad this movie is. Like, I just can't. You know, there's some movies that it's too hard. This one in particular, you know, I didn't even mention fucking Keanu Reeves at the beginning of the movie with his terrible, terrible performance. I mean, every Keanu Reeves movie that he makes is like an apology for this movie to me. Like, every single one. Because I just think about Francis Ford Coppola. Why the fuck did he choose to cast Keanu Reeves? All the other casting choices are perfect. Fucking Anthony Hopkins, Winona Ryder. Well, I guess Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman was a trash pick for Dracula. Anyway, I hate Dracula, and it came out the year I was born. Ugh! Just imagine one of the worst movies to you is a movie that came out the year you were born. Like, just imagine how shitty that is. Just imagine how terrible that is and how devastating and trash. Anyways, number 13 is Mad Monster Party. This is an extremely underrated Rankin and Bass movie. It's all claymation, and the Dracula in this, he was pretty good. You know, he wasn't really one of the greatest Draculas. He wasn't the worst. He was just pretty good. He had this really cool element to his character where he had, like, this eyeglass that he wore, and I really like the frame of his body, and his hair is kind of triangular a little bit, and kind of like sharp. I like the design, and I liked his performance. Number 12 is John Carradine in House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. This is a mediocre performance, and the thing that I think really made me rank him lower than what I would have before I was ranking these Draculas for real is that there's been other Draculas who've had less screen time than him, and they've done much better jobs than him. You know, like, because I was going to use the excuse, he's pretty good, and he might be even better if he had his own movie. But the fact that he had 2 movies and all these scattered scenes where he could have easily impressed you and showed you that he was one of the best Draculas, and he didn't, you know, it just shows that he's just not that. You know, in House of Frankenstein, he was pretty good. I mean, he commanded the screen. He was kind of creepy. He has this kind of glare that he does, and the way that the light hits his face is really hard. It's stuff of nightmares. I had this really gross nightmare last night where I was eating cat paws and bones it was the grossest dream I've ever had. Like, it all tasted like I don't know, like, just, it was so gross. It was like bland chicken, but it was like Jello. And it was, oh God. And I know that's another gross and weird tangent too. It was a nightmare. And it was like, it was so gross. It was like, there was like pause and just, oh. And then finally there was this big long bone. And it was so gross it woke me up. Because I've never had a dream like that before. But that, it's like I'm some sort of a psychopath that's slowly revealing his inner mind throughout this video. And I don't mean to be doing that. It's just, I'm just being honest. It was a really gross nightmare. And then it's either like weird nightmares now, or it's dreams about going back to my old house to get more things that were left behind. Like, I have those dreams like almost every day, almost every night. I'll go to sleep and then all of a sudden I'll be at my old house. And this dream with the cat paws, it took place at my old house as well. And it's like I'm there, I'm getting things, stuff happens, and it's like every single dream is like that. And so, but no, yesterday I had a pretty good dream. But anyway, that's beside the point. Why was I talking about nightmares? Anyway, John Carradine in this movie, I kind of like this, little short story where, he comes to this couple's house and I think he kills one of them, or he turns one of them, and then he's going to take her away, and then he gets knocked off the carriage and dies in the sun. I thought that had potential. Like, they could have done a whole movie where he's just going around killing people, and he's on the countryside riding around in his carriage, and maybe he takes women along with him, and then he just kills them and dumps them by the side of the road, and and it's like karma finally catches up to him at the end because this Dracula segment, it was like almost totally disconnected from the movie. Like, it felt like it could have been its own thing. It felt like it did not need to be in House of Frankenstein, because it was kind of deceiving. I mean, he should have been fighting the other monsters at the end. And that's where we get to the worst, in my opinion, one of the worst Universal Monsters movies I've ever seen. House of Dracula. So you got this, I think maybe Dracula wants a cure, or there's this other guy and he needs some medicine thing. I don't know. It was a disaster movie. John Carradine in it, he was just okay. He doesn't really have that strong presence, that creepy, monstrous presence as much as other actors on the list. He's just very mid. It feels like he could have been his own character, not Dracula, but Fagula. Or, I don't know, not Blackula, but how about Bacula? Like, isn't there a guy named, like, Scott Bakula? So you could have Bacula played by John Carradine, or Macula, or Tacula, or something. Like, he should have just been a new character instead of trying to be this iconic presence. I would never play Dracula, asterisk, because I know I probably would if given the opportunity. But I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses. I know that I'm not meant to play Dracula. I made my own character for another vampire movie that I will be making in the future. And I wrote him for me. And, sometimes, especially nowadays, these actors, they need to know that a role is not for them. Like Little Mermaid, Little Token Mermaid, the list goes on. Number 11 is the Monster Squad Dracula. Now this guy, he fit into this movie like a brilliant puzzle piece. He completed the puzzle that was the Monster Squad movie. Without him, it would not have been as good. At the same time, he did not really do much more to me than service the movie. He did not... I did not feel like that's Dracula. In comparison to others, it just kind of felt like, oh, that's Dracula in this movie, in this story. And he did a great job for this one movie, but I do not think that he's one of the best Draculas. He has this kind of suburban dad look to him, like almost like a dad who's just dressing up as Dracula for Halloween. He has a couple of really creepy, kind of great moments, like the one where he says, "Give me the amulet, you damn bitch," or whatever, to that little girl. Like, he had some pretty badass moments like that made me think, ooh, maybe he would be a good Dracula in his own movie. But then, there was a lot of other parts where I just kind of felt like he was there, and like he's just servicing this movie, and he's not really, he wouldn't be able to really service his own movie. Similar with all the other monsters in the movie, by the way, except for the Wolfman. I genuinely think the Wolfman in the Monster Squad, he could have his own movie series. He was perfect. And it had a lot to do with the makeup, too. The makeup for the Wolfman was the best out of all the monsters in that movie. And then number 10 is the Dracula from Kiss of the Vampire. In Kiss of the Vampire, it was supposed to have Dracula, they took this concept from another movie, Brides of Dracula, where that was supposed to have elements from this, but they just decided to do their own thing, and they had this character in the movie who's basically Dracula. He has a castle. I think he's like Doctor something or Baron something. I can't remember. He was okay. He was very mid-tier. He was like a C+ Dracula. He talked. I think that's an element about Dracula that a lot of them don't get right, is the voice, the talking. There are certain Draculas who just, they don't really say anything, or they just say very few lines, and to me, they're just not very good. But then I really like characters like this who, they deceive you, they're charming, they have like two faces like him. I mean, there's this moment where the wife in the movie, she wakes up, or does she wake up? I can't remember. She sees this Dracula, and he's gonna come over and eat her, and it's terrifying, and you think she's trapped in there with him. She was forced to be there, and she was allured up there, and it's really, really creepy and scary. But he's not really a full character to me. He's a little bit boring, his line delivery, but still, I think he's better than other Draculas on this list. Number 9 is Monster Mash. This is one of my all-time favorite kids' movies. I would watch it again and again and again. The story is all about the classic monsters. They have now become a thing of the past, and instead, everyone likes slashers. Everyone likes Chucky. Everyone likes Jason. and Alien from the Alien movies. And so what happens is the monsters get like forced to stop being monsters or something because they're not scary enough. And then they go to this they lure this family to this castle in Transylvania. And then they try again and again to scare this family, and it goes terribly wrong. The family's not scared of them, and that is when the slashers come, and they try to kill the family and the monsters. And that is when the monsters all, go back to being in beast mode. And it's really cool because they have like all these boss battles with these slashers, and it's really, really cool. And the highlight, is Dracula. Dracula goes up to Jason Voorhees, who they call Eddie Spaghetti, because he's made out of these worms, and he just sucks all the worms into his mouth and just eats this guy and just sucks him all to pieces until he's dead. He just sucks him dry. And and I know it sounds weird, but it was badass when I saw this as a kid. I thought, this Dracula, he is fucking awesome. He is somebody who, I wish they'd made more movies with these actors, with this animation style, because he could hold his own. Number 8 is the Count Dracula from the beginning of the movie Blackula. I'm not going to count Blackula because I think he's his own character, and I think that, maybe you could do a list ranking vampires from movies in general with him. But I am going to count the Count Dracula from that movie. He was very subtle, but I thought he was very creepy at the same time. He invites the king or the prince of this African country, and the prince or the king, I can't remember, Blackula, he asks Dracula to stop enslaving his people or something, and Dracula's like, okay, not. And then he imprisons this guy and his wife, and he turns this guy into a vampire, and then locks him up with the wife and lets her die, basically starve to death, and then he is just in a coffin and he can't do anything about her dying. And I thought, that is a savage Dracula right there. Like, that is the type of Dracula who we need to see more of, instead of seeing, like Twilight Batman and shit, people like him. We need to see people like this Count Dracula. It's just too bad that he doesn't have his own movie, because I do think that he could have had some sort of a tie-in movie. He had an interesting look to him too, where he had this kind of long hair and it's like grayish white, and he had kind of a goatee or a mustache and beard. I think he's a very underrated Dracula. Even though people talk about this movie, they laugh at it, I think that there are some good, serious elements in it that deserve to be talked about more. Number 7 is the Baron from Brides of Dracula. This guy, he took Christopher Lee's place, and he said, fuck you, Christopher Lee, I'm going to do Dracula way better than you ever have. Because, let's face it, like, this performance that he gave in Brides of Dracula, he kicked Christopher Lee's ass. Christopher Lee saw the script of Brides of Dracula, and he said, I'm not going to do that movie because I don't like the lines, and I don't like this, and I don't like that. And so whoever this guy is, he was like, oh, really? Christopher Lee? Well, sorry, but I'm going to do this movie, and It's going to be better than all your Dracula movies combined. And it is. It's a way better movie than every Christopher Lee Dracula. It's fucking awesome in every way, shape, or form. It gives you everything you could ever want in a Dracula movie. But it just happens to have the Baron. He's charming. He's seductive to the characters. You really understand the appeal to this guy. He has a monster side and he has this human side. He has the full two faces that you can see in a perfect Dracula. And he has an interesting look to him, where he has this kind of gray cape instead of a black one. He has this interesting kind of gentlemanly hair cut. And I just think he is a severely underrated Dracula. He kicked Christopher Lee's ass. And if you're wondering why I emphasize that, but then I rank Christopher Lee higher in this list, is because I'm really just talking about Christopher Lee. Around this time, I think his next one was Dracula, Prince of Darkness. And that movie was terrible. And his performance was terrible in that movie. He doesn't even talk the fucking whole movie. And, Baron and Brides of Dracula was just light years better. Number 6 is Nicolas Cage and Renfield. I think Nicolas Cage did a better job than I ever would have expected of him to do. He played it almost 80% seriously. And if the movie had been serious, the movie Renfield, if it had just stuck to being a serious Dracula movie with some comedic elements, this could have been the best Dracula ever. He has an intensity to him. He is very, very good, surprisingly good. The makeup too, the way that he degrades from not eating is great. The look, all of his different outfits, perfect Dracula. Perfect. Just, he is incredible as Dracula. I don't understand why they put him in this movie so little. Like, they really did a disservice by having him in the movie for like 5 minutes and then showing all those 5 minutes in the various trailers and promotional pictures. I would like to see Nicolas Cage in a serious Dracula movie. Number 5 is Nosferatu. Count Orlok, the original. He set a precedent. He told everyone how to do it. How to play Count Dracula. You mimic Max Schreck in his performance. He almost has this alien-like look to him. The shape of his head, the weird shape, and the long fingers, and the makeup to this character is just incredible. And he does an amazing job at being just really creepy, really like he is actually scary. I've never had really nightmares about horror movies or horror characters, but I did have one nightmare about him as a kid, and he's the only one. And I went over to the stairs at nighttime, and I looked down, and it was the darkness inside the bathroom where I saw Nosferatu standing there, like in the movie where he's standing in the doorway and he's gonna fucking kill whatever that guy's name is, the German name they gave him. And it was because I never liked that as a kid. My bathroom downstairs, it always used to be turned off at night, and so all the lights downstairs were off, and it gave me like this really like uncomfortable feeling of like what could be down there at nighttime. Like, do things go on down there? Like, could something just emerge from out of the bathroom and come and kill me? So then as time went on, actually, Safi, she would leave the bathroom light on downstairs, and then eventually she would sleep downstairs and just, have it on anyway. And then the nightmares went away. And the one flaw to Nosferatu is that you never hear his voice. The voice for a Dracula character, it's very important. I don't care what you think, like, whatever, like, his voice is an important aspect of his character. And the fact that you're not able to hear Nosferatu's voice is a big problem for me. Because I bet that if you were able to hear his voice, maybe it wouldn't be as good. Maybe it would just sound like a random German guy, like, "Hello, I am Count Orlok, and wow, I want to buy this property." Like maybe it wouldn't have sounded as good. Oh, speaking of sound, number 4, Nosferatu, remake, 1978 or 9, played by Klaus Kinski. Ah! That's my impression of Klaus Kinski. I don't like this guy. I think he's a piece of crap, but he is sometimes very good in the movies that he's in, and this would be one of those times, Klaus Kinski's portrayal of Nosferatu is just perfect. It's 100% A+ perfection. He's creepy as hell. He's gross. His voice is where it really gets me, because he has this like this dry, raspy voice. Like you can hear that he's thirsty. You can hear that he's like this inhuman creature who needs to feed and needs to drink blood. And he's so perfect in this role. He nails it. I could have put him at number 1 easily. But the problem is that the movie was so bad, it did not give him enough of a chance to win me over in terms of putting him at number 1. The movie was very boring. There were lots of meandering long shots of just moody, atmospheric pictures of like skulls and stones and stuff. Whereas in other Dracula movies, you see a lot more of Dracula doing things, moving around. In this movie, the highlight of Dracula is at the dinner scene with Jonathan. And it's almost like pitch black in this room. And Nosferatu's head almost looks like it's floating in the pitch black darkness. And it is just so scary and just, ooh. It's hard to even think about because it's really that creepy. Number 3 is Christopher Lee. He'll never be number 1 for me again. I really don't like his attitude, frankly. I don't like actors who shit-talk their films or roles. Christopher Lee as Dracula, he is iconic, but even so, the whole thing with him, he's like, I don't want to say these lines, I don't want to do these movies. It's pretentious, it's fucking queer, it's fucking stupid, because he's done all these he was the inspiration for James Bond. He did a James Bond movie. He's perfectly okay with doing that, but then when it comes to Dracula sequels, he's like, yeah, that's too much, it's goofy, it's over the top. And it's like, a lot of people take these movies very seriously. They don't really see those as over the top. They don't really see them as goofy and dumb. they see them as genuinely good horror movies. And I really don't like that attitude. I even heard that, like, in some cases he would refuse to sign Dracula-related things, and that he would only sign, like, Lord of the Rings things and stuff like that. And it's like, that's just really shitty. Like, it really ruins the character for me. In terms of the character, he started off on a really good note with Horror Dracula. He gave a pretty good performance, you know. He didn't really say much throughout the movie except for maybe a couple of lines, but he did a really good job. He had this really scary face that he would make, and he looked like this inhuman beast, and he was just really brutal and badass as Dracula. And then in Dracula, Prince of Darkness, he was trash. He was terrible. He didn't say anything the whole movie because he didn't like the script. So he threw a diva temper tantrum and he didn't talk. And then in, what was the next one? Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. He was a lot better in that one, and he was pretty good. You know, he has this 7-foot-tall, beastly stature for Dracula. Perfect for Dracula. And he did a pretty good job. And then he did Taste the Blood of Dracula, and he reverted back to being trash. He reverted back to being dialogueless Dracula. I'm just gonna stare and do all the same things that I do in every single movie. I'm just gonna growl and go "Rah!" and do all these things that are just not very effective. And but then, like, if you talked like other actors on this list, you could have been a lot better in terms of the ranking. And then came, what was the next one? Then came Scars of Dracula. And this one, he tried to kind of come back and say, hey, I'm going to speak in this movie. It's going to start out kind of like the book a little bit. And it was a big failure. You know, it was just a disaster. And his performance as Dracula was really not very good, to be quite honest. And then came Dracula AD 1972, which is my favorite Dracula movie, which Brides of Dracula, it's not a Dracula movie, but it is better than Dracula AD 1972. And what do you know? In Dracula AD 1972, he has the most dialogue out of all of his Dracula movies combined. And you really get a much better picture of this Dracula character. He still has the moments where he doesn't talk, and it's really scary because he's brutal. He just wants to kill, kill, kill. And it's scary because, like, when he stops talking, you know that that's when he's going to mean business. You know, unlike all these MCU movies where people just are talking and joking while they're battling to the death. You know, when Christopher Lee doesn't talk, that's when it gets really scary. But the problem is that him talking more actually exposed his very fatal flaw as Dracula. And that is that his voice as Dracula is terrible. It's a terrible, terrible impression of Dracula. It's just, I am British guy. I am British Dracula. Welcome to my house. I am Dracula. You know, like, it's not scary. It's not intimidating. You know, the thing with him talking in the fucking Dracula AD 1972, he has some really bad moments in terms of his voice. If he had a different voice, if he had like a scarier voice, like with other actor Klaus Kinski, if he had a voice like him, it would have been a lot better. But he is all bark and no bite Dracula. He has he's pretty perfect almost, just he needs to have more dialogue and he needs a better voice. And then finally, the final nail in the coffin before he just became trash, in my opinion, is Satanic Rites of Dracula, which was it was slightly an improvement in terms of his voice. He had this great sequence at the end where he's actually talking to Van Helsing, and he's saying all these lines that actually, they're delivered pretty well. But then the rest of the movie, he's just the same Dracula that we've seen a million times, where he's phoning it in, and he's just doing the same things over and over again. And you can just tell that he hates the scripts, and that, even though he's putting all these people to work to make these movies, but he's mad about it. And it's like, I just can't stand that attitude. Number 2 is Bela Lugosi. If Bela Lugosi had 2 other good Dracula movies where he got to be Dracula the whole movie, and it wasn't just some gimmick, and it wasn't just some side role, then he would be the number 1 Dracula. But the problem is that you have this one Dracula movie, and frankly, the original Dracula is boring. And it has been boring ever since I was a kid. And it doesn't matter that Bela Lugosi is a perfect Dracula. The movie's boring. And it's hard to watch. And then you have, what was his other... Well, he was in some movie called Mark of the Vampire, which I guess was just a rip-off of London After Midnight, which that movie's never come out. And then he was in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. But other than that, he did not really have his chance to continue playing this character. And I think that that's a major, major flaw with his Dracula. Now, just speaking about his performance in the original movie, he was perfection. Every single aspect of his character was a 10 out of 10. His voice, he had this perfect accent. This voice was perfect for a Dracula character. It was so much better than in the book, where they didn't really, I don't think they really talked about his voice and if he had a particular tone or accent or sound or like anything. His outfit, like every single element that they added to this character to make him who he was in that movie, really, it started, in my opinion, it was even more influential than Nosferatu, just in a broader sense. You have Count Chocula, you have Sesame Street, the Count on Sesame Street. Dracula, his whole entire life as a character is all thanks to Bela Lugosi and his performance. He did his own makeup. I don't think he could speak a lot of English, and he really did a damn fine job as Dracula. And he was scary too. He is still scary to this day. He makes these faces, he crinkles his fingers and squeezes them in weird directions and things, and he is perfect. He is just so perfect as this character. But then, number one is the guy from The Creeps, Full Moon movie. So The Creeps is all about, there's this guy, and he wants to bring all the movie monsters to life by getting their original book manuscripts and then somehow bringing them to life in this machine thing that he built. And he ends up bringing them to life, except for they're little people instead of full-sized. And Dracula is basically the star of the show. And somehow he does a better job than Bela Lugosi with less screen time and with less to do. To me, this is the definitive Dracula. His voice is even better than Bela Lugosi's in terms of he has this speech near the end where he really hammers it in that he is the perfect Dracula. And he gives this speech about, I think it was about icons or something, and about their importance, or that might have been the female character. I can't remember. But I remember that he was perfect in every single way, shape, or form, even though he is not, 7 foot tall Christopher Lee. He still had all of the presence and all of the charisma and all of those key features that Dracula needs. He was creepy. He was scary a little bit. You could feel that this guy, if he was full-sized in the story like he was supposed to be, then he could have done a lot of damage. And he did a lot of damage anyway. Like, at the end of the movie, the whole reason that the good guys win is literally only because this Dracula just concedes, and he says, okay, you have a good point. And that's another thing. He's a Dracula who's actually fair and reasonable. Like, he's not fully a monster. And I think that, that's a big problem with people playing Dracula. They either think of Dracula as 100% monster or 100% human, with that monster is like a character flaw, and he doesn't want to be Dracula, whatever, and like Gary Oldman. But this guy in The Creeps, I really think he is the best Dracula. I really suggest you guys watch that crappy movie just so that you can see his performance as Dracula. Anyways, please like this video, comment, tell me how you would rank the Draculas, and then please subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more monster performance ranking videos. I definitely think, I'm not saying Christopher Lee is a bad Dracula. I'm just saying that, a lot of people have said a lot of true things, a lot of accurate things about him, but I would also add that he was just not as good as people say he was. And I just think that he is a little bit overrated as Dracula, especially when you take into account that he had all these lines that he was supposed to say, and maybe if he had said those lines, they would have made him look better or worse. You know what I mean? But the fact that he was so full of himself that he wouldn't say those lines, it's like, give me a break. You're playing Dracula versus a bunch of stoners in Dracula 80, 1972. We don't need to have this, like, battle where, you know what I mean? Like, all the lines in Brides of Dracula, they were great. They fit the character perfectly. And the movie was so good, it's better than any Dracula that he ever made. So, and then I didn't even mention, after Satanic Rites of Dracula, he was quote-unquote tired of playing the character. But then he plays him in The Legend of the... No, wait, no, he didn't. But then he plays him in Count Dracula, that crappy, boring 1970s movie. And then he plays him again in some foreign comedy movie called Dracula and Son, or Uncle Dracula or something. And it's like, oh, you're so tired of playing Dracula that you do these joke movies. Like, you do these two movies that, nobody even talks about. Those movies like Count Dracula, that was a terrible, terrible adaptation. They had Klaus Kinski playing fucking Renfield. I mean, God, what a terrible idea that was. So anyways, and then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest videos like this. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.